In 2026, a bold claim began circulating across tech circles. Maxwell Chikumbutso had unveiled an innovation so advanced, so unconventional, that some analysts described it as placing Zimbabwe nearly a century ahead of current industrial standards. A century ahead. It sounds impossible, exaggerated, almost cinematic. But as engineers, investors, and governments began examining the architecture behind this invention, skepticism slowly transformed into curiosity, and curiosity into strategic attention. At the center of this breakthrough lies a concept that challenges traditional engineering frameworks: energy independence at a systemic level. Not incremental battery improvements, not marginal efficiency gains, but a redesigned approach to how machines generate, store, and optimize power within a closed intelligent loop. Maxwell's new system integrates advanced power management algorithms with high-density modular energy units capable of adaptive output. Unlike conventional designs that rely solely on centralized energy grids or static charging models, this architecture functions dynamically, adjusting energy flow in real time based on load demand, environmental conditions, and predictive usage modeling. In simple terms, it thinks before it consumes. Imagine industrial facilities operating with drastically reduced reliance on unstable grids. Transportation networks powered by self-regulating energy ecosystems. Remote communities gaining infrastructure-level capability without massive centralized power plants. This is where the century-ahead narrative begins to make sense. Because innovation is rarely about speed alone. It's about paradigm shift. Maxwell Chikumbutso's unveiling demonstrated a layered system, hardware precision engineered for durability, software optimized through machine learning, and connectivity protocols designed to scale nationally or even continentally. Each module communicates with the next, creating a synchronized intelligence grid rather than isolated components. And then came the real surprise. Early prototype demonstrations revealed stability metrics that rivaled, and in some cases exceeded, established industrial benchmarks. Energy leakage minimized. Load balancing automated. Maintenance cycles predicted months in advance. For a nation often underestimated in global tech narratives, the symbolism was powerful. Zimbabwe was no longer positioned as a follower in the technological race. It was presenting itself as a disruptor. But this isn't just about national pride. It's about global implications. If this architecture scales effectively, industries from transportation to telecommunications could undergo radical transformation. Power outages become rare anomalies instead of recurring obstacles. Manufacturing facilities operate continuously with optimized efficiency. Even defense and aerospace applications could integrate modular intelligent energy cores for enhanced reliability. What makes this innovation particularly disruptive is its adaptability. It isn't limited to a single sector. The same foundational system can power vehicles, industrial plants, remote infrastructure, and potentially even smart city frameworks. That flexibility changes everything. Because technological revolutions don't spread through exclusivity. They spread through scalability. And Maxwell Chikumbutso's design appears engineered for exactly that. International observers have begun analyzing the geopolitical implications. Energy independence has always shaped economic leverage. Nations that control their power infrastructure often influence broader strategic dynamics. A modular, intelligent, scalable system originating from Zimbabwe introduces an entirely new variable into that equation. But beyond the political and economic angles lies something deeper: perception. For decades, technological leadership has been concentrated within predictable regions. Innovation hubs clustered around established capital pipelines and research institutions. This unveiling disrupts that narrative, suggesting that high-level engineering breakthroughs can emerge from unexpected corners of the globe. And that shift in perception may be just as powerful as the invention itself. Yet, even as excitement builds, questions remain. Can the system scale from prototype to national deployment? Will global investors recognize its long-term potential? How will competing industries respond? Because history shows us that disruptive innovations rarely move unchallenged. They encounter resistance. They provoke skepticism. They force established systems to adapt or risk obsolescence. Maxwell Chikumbutso's latest invention is not merely a device. It's a statement, a declaration that innovation geography is expanding, that intelligence is decentralized, that the future of technology may not belong to the loudest market, but to the boldest architecture. And if this breakthrough achieves full operational scale, we may look back on 2026 not simply as the year Zimbabwe surprised the world, because once a nation demonstrates the capacity to engineer independent, scalable energy systems, the ripple effects extend far beyond a single invention. Consider the domino effect. Universities begin aligning research programs around advanced power systems and AI-driven infrastructure. Young engineers, once looking abroad for opportunity, suddenly see a future at home. Venture capital that once bypassed the region begins flowing inward, not as charity, but as calculated investment. Innovation ecosystems don't grow from one product. They grow from belief. And belief multiplies when proof exists. If Maxwell Chikumbutso's architecture proves commercially viable at scale, Zimbabwe could position itself as a hub for modular energy exports. Instead of exporting raw materials, it could export engineered intelligence, complete systems packaged for deployment across developing and developed markets alike. That's when the shift becomes exponential. Energy independence reduces production costs. Lower production costs increase competitiveness. Competitiveness attracts partnerships. Partnerships accelerate research. And suddenly, a single invention evolves into an innovation cycle. But what makes this moment even more compelling is timing. The world is currently navigating energy instability, rising consumption demands, and sustainability pressures. Grid systems built decades ago strain under modern digital loads. Electric vehicles, AI data centers, smart cities, all demand more reliable and adaptive energy frameworks. Into that global tension steps a modular, AI-driven system promising efficiency, autonomy, and resilience. This isn't disruption in isolation. It's disruption aligned with global necessity. And alignment is powerful. Governments may see national resilience. Corporations may see cost efficiency. Communities may see empowerment. Yet innovation at this level inevitably introduces strategic complexity. Who regulates it? Who standardizes it? Who controls intellectual property rights? Because when a technology appears to be 100 years ahead, it doesn't just excite markets, it challenges them. Established energy conglomerates may attempt to integrate it. Competitors may attempt to replicate it. Policymakers may attempt to control its expansion. And Maxwell Chikumbutso stands at the center of that accelerating storm. Visionary innovators often face a critical crossroads: maintain independence and scale carefully, or align with global power structures to accelerate adoption. Each path carries opportunity. Each path carries risk. Meanwhile, public perception continues to evolve. What began as disbelief slowly transforms into fascination. Media coverage expands. Analysts debate feasibility. Engineers reverse engineer presentations. International delegations request demonstrations. Momentum builds quietly before it erupts visibly. But perhaps the most profound consequence lies in inspiration. When a breakthrough emerges from a region historically underestimated, it sends a message to every young innovator watching. Geography does not limit imagination. Infrastructure does not limit ambition. Narrative does not limit capability. And that psychological shift could outlast the invention itself. Because technological revolutions are not defined only by patents and prototypes. They are defined by mindset transformation. If Zimbabwe is now perceived as capable of producing century-ahead innovation, investment patterns shift. Educational priorities shift. Global collaboration shifts. And once global collaboration shifts, acceleration becomes inevitable. The question is no longer whether this innovation is bold. The question is how far its influence will extend. Will it redefine how developing nations approach infrastructure? Will it inspire decentralized energy frameworks worldwide? Will it force traditional power giants to rethink centralized control models? Or will it ignite an entirely new technological alliance built around adaptive, intelligent, self-regulating systems? What's certain is this: the unveiling was not the climax. It was the ignition point. And as the world watches closely, the next phase will determine whether this invention remains a powerful symbol. And sustained combustion, in a world of innovation, requires infrastructure, partnerships, and relentless iteration. Behind closed doors, engineers refine prototypes. Algorithms are stress-tested under extreme simulations. Load capacities are pushed beyond standard thresholds. Real-world deployments begin quietly in controlled environments: industrial parks, remote facilities, experimental transit corridors. Data accumulates. Performance improves. Confidence grows. What began as a bold unveiling slowly transitions into measurable implementation. And this is where the real transformation begins. If the system consistently demonstrates resilience, maintaining stable output during grid fluctuations, optimizing energy flow during peak demand, reducing waste across industrial cycles, then industries will not merely admire it. They will depend on it. Dependence creates permanence. And permanence reshapes economies. Imagine export agreements centered not on raw lithium or copper, but on complete intelligent energy modules. Entire infrastructure packages shipped globally. Plug-and integrate systems capable of powering cities, transportation fleets, manufacturing hubs. Zimbabwe would not just be exporting technology. It would be exporting capability. But with capability comes responsibility. Scaling a century-ahead system demands cybersecurity frameworks robust enough to withstand international threats. It demands training programs to cultivate engineers capable of maintaining and advancing the architecture. It demands regulatory transparency to build trust across borders. And perhaps most critically, it demands vision beyond profit. Because truly transformative technologies redefine society. If deployed strategically, decentralized intelligent energy could reduce rural electrification gaps. It could empower emerging economies without forcing dependence on outdated centralized grids. It could accelerate the transition to sustainable systems without requiring decades of incremental upgrades. The ripple effects would touch healthcare, education, transportation, communications. Hospitals running uninterrupted. Schools powered reliably. Data centers operating efficiently. Factories minimizing downtime. A self-reinforcing ecosystem of productivity. And as these implementations expand, the global narrative begins to shift permanently. Instead of asking whether Zimbabwe is 100 years ahead, observers begin asking how to collaborate. Instead of skepticism, there is strategic interest. Instead of dismissal, there is dialogue. But history reminds us that technological revolutions often face defining stress tests: market volatility, political pressure, competitive disruption. The coming years will determine whether Maxwell Chikumbutso's innovation withstands these forces. Will it evolve through iteration? Will it adapt under pressure? Will it maintain independence while scaling globally? Or will global systems attempt to absorb and standardize it? The answers to these questions will shape more than a company's trajectory. They will shape perception of technological leadership itself. Because if this innovation succeeds at scale, it challenges an unspoken assumption that advanced technological architecture must originate from established global centers. It proves instead that ingenuity is borderless, that advancement is not monopolized, that the next century of progress may emerge from places the world least expects. And as prototypes transition into infrastructure, as demonstrations transition into deployment, as ambition transitions into execution, one realization becomes clear. This isn't just about being 100 years ahead. It's about redefining who gets to define the future, and destiny, in the age of intelligent systems, is shaped by who controls the architecture beneath society. If Maxwell Chikumbutso's innovation matures into a globally adopted platform, it could influence how entire continents design their next generation of infrastructure. Emerging economies might bypass outdated centralized grids altogether, leaping directly into modular, AI-optimized energy ecosystems, much like some regions skipped landline telephony and moved straight to mobile networks. Leapfrogging isn't just efficient, it's transformative. And transformation at this scale reshapes global power dynamics. Investors begin recalculating risk models. International development agencies reassess funding strategies. Technology alliances quietly expand into new corridors. What was once considered peripheral becomes strategically central. Meanwhile, within Zimbabwe itself, the cultural shift deepens. Tech incubators multiply. Engineering programs expand. Private sector R&D accelerates. Youth ambition intensifies. Because once a society witnesses proof that global class innovation can emerge locally, imagination scales. And imagination is the first stage of sustained progress. But beyond economics and geopolitics lies an even more compelling layer: resilience. In a world increasingly affected by climate instability, cyber threats, and infrastructure overload, systems that adapt autonomously become invaluable. An intelligent energy architecture capable of isolating faults, redistributing load, and self-optimizing in real time offers something rare: stability in uncertainty. If cities can remain powered during extreme conditions, if industries can maintain output during global disruptions, if communities can rely on decentralized energy independence, then this innovation becomes more than advanced. It becomes essential. And essential technologies rarely remain regional. They spread. They integrate. They standardize. But with expansion comes evolution. Competitors will emerge. Enhancements will be introduced. Collaborations will form. The architecture unveiled in 2026 may only represent version 1 of a continuously improving system. Future iterations could incorporate quantum optimization models, advanced materials science breakthroughs, next-generation AI capable of predictive urban orchestration. The original invention becomes the foundation for an expanding ecosystem of technological layers. And as those layers stack, the 100 years ahead phrase may begin to feel less like exaggeration and more like early recognition of an exponential curve. Because exponential change rarely announces itself loudly. It grows quietly, until it reshapes everything. The world is now watching closely, not with disbelief, but with anticipation. And as deployment expands, partnerships form, and infrastructure integrates, one truth will become impossible to ignore. The global innovation landscape is no longer linear. It is decentralized, distributed, unpredictable, and perhaps that is the most powerful outcome of all. Maxwell Chikumbutso's unveiling did more than present a breakthrough. It expanded the boundaries of possibility. And as those boundaries continue to stretch, because architecture is not merely about building systems, it is about shaping eras. If this innovation continues its trajectory, historians may one day describe this period not as a technological upgrade cycle, but as the dawn of distributed intelligence infrastructure. A time when energy stopped being a fragile backbone and became a responsive, learning organism woven into daily life. And as adoption spreads, something subtle yet profound begins to happen. Global collaboration no longer flows in a single direction. Engineers from Europe, Asia, and North America begin visiting Harare not as advisors, but as partners. Research papers cite Zimbabwean laboratories. International conferences reference case studies born from this new architecture. The narrative inverts. Instead of asking, "Can this work?" the world begins asking, "How do we integrate it?" Integration marks legitimacy. Legitimacy accelerates influence. And influence reshapes future standards. Imagine global energy protocols rewritten around adaptive modularity rather than rigid centralization. Imagine smart cities designed from inception with decentralized intelligence cores. Imagine disaster response frameworks powered by self-regulating microgrids capable of restoring power autonomously within minutes. These are not distant fantasies. They are logical extensions of scalable intelligent design. But every revolution carries a silent test: longevity. Can the innovation sustain relevance through rapid global competition? Can it remain agile while scaling across cultures, regulations, and infrastructures? Can it preserve its core philosophy while adapting to diverse market demands? Because the world of technology rewards not just pioneers, but survivors. If Maxwell Chikumbutso's system navigates these challenges successfully, the ripple effects may reach far beyond energy. Transportation networks could synchronize seamlessly with intelligent grids. Telecommunications could stabilize through adaptive load balancing. Data centers could operate with near-zero downtime. Remote regions could experience infrastructure parity with major metropolitan hubs. And once infrastructure parity becomes achievable, opportunity distribution changes. Education improves. Healthcare access expands. Entrepreneurship flourishes. A single architectural shift begins influencing social mobility itself. This is where the story transcends technology. It becomes about equity, about resilience, about rewriting assumptions. For generations, progress has often been framed as something exported from dominant economies. But when innovation originates from regions previously overlooked, it challenges an outdated hierarchy. It reminds the world that creativity is universal, capability is universal, potential is universal. And perhaps that is the quiet revolution unfolding beneath the headlines. Not just an invention, not just an engineering feat, but a recalibration of where humanity expects the future to emerge from. As 2026 moves forward, deployment numbers will matter. Performance metrics will matter. Investment rounds will matter. But something else will matter even more. Momentum. Because momentum, once achieved, is difficult to reverse. And if the momentum behind this breakthrough continues building, if industries adopt it, if governments support it, if communities benefit from it, then the phrase 100 years ahead may evolve from a provocative headline into a measurable reality. The unveiling was the spark. The scaling is the fire. And the outcome? That depends on what happens next, in laboratories, in boardrooms, in policy chambers, and on the streets of cities preparing for a new infrastructure age. The story is no longer about proving capability. It is about sustaining transformation. And transformation, once set in motion, rarely asks permission to continue, and so the question is no longer whether Maxwell Chikumbutso's innovation shocked the world.
It did.
The real question is what the world chooses to do with it. If this architecture scales, integrates, and endures, it will not simply mark a technological milestone, it will mark a psychological one. A shift in how nations perceive their own potential. A shift in how innovation is distributed across the globe. A shift in who gets to define the next century of progress. Zimbabwe's unveiling was more than a product launch. It was a declaration. A declaration that intelligence is not confined by geography. That engineering excellence is not reserved for traditional power centers. That the future can emerge from places history once underestimated. Whether this breakthrough becomes a global standard or a bold stepping stone toward even greater advancements, one truth is undeniable. The innovation map has changed. And when historians look back at this moment, they may not just remember the invention itself, they will remember the signal it sent to the world. That the next era of progress will belong to those who dare to build beyond expectation. And if this truly is the beginning of a century-ahead transformation, then the future is not arriving slowly.